behind that, we were obviously promoting the principles. I think that, unfortunately, we don't have time today, but we could, there could be a topic for another future talk about the peninsula principles, or in general other instruments regarding what to do with climate displaced population. I think that we might have time only for one or two more questions.
Will you be giving your PowerPoint presentation to the center here, supposed to understand?
They tape it here, so the tape will be available.
You have the clarity of the maps and everything.
Sure. Yeah, I will say, typically I would not hesitate, but I was traveling with a professional photographer. He is so obsessed with his photos that I don't know if I can share the pictures. That is, I can share the text.
Just quickly,
Alberto?
I don't have a lot of time, but I'm just curious about the agreement between the government of Panama and the UNAS. Were you able to see, like, is there like a contract, like a legal agreement on this kind of relationship that they have? Is more autonomous, but now Displacement Solutions is calling for the Panamanian government to get on board, and also about the role of Displacement Solutions. Is your goal to foster some kind of a forum so the parties will come and agree on what to do, or like, for example, in their funds, if they're international funds, who would receive the funds? The Panamanian government, or the UNAS, or third party, all those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Alberto, for that very important question. So the first, the autonomous status of, so again, the Gunas have this revolution in 1925, and they, it was an armed revolution. They, after abuses by the government, by the new government of Panama. Remember, Panama separated from Colombia in 1903. The Gunas expelled, they killed the police officers that the central government had in the region, and they expelled all the other state functionaries. Actually, the story behind that also is that the Gunas, as a way of protection against the Panamanian government, they asked the U.S. Military to intervene as a broker in the process. Remember, the Panama separated from Colombia in 1903 as a result of the actions or the intervention of the U.S. government, so with the idea of building the canal. So the U.S. government was very involved in Panama, was really the de facto government there, or the de facto power, the real power. So the military was able to kind of bring the two parts together so that the Panamanian government will not retaliate, because again, at least 10 police officers were killed by the Gunas in that process. So the Panamanian government didn't retaliate, and also the government agreed on created an autonomous region, and finally, since 1938, the comarca of Gunayala was established. However, as I mentioned in the presentation, and we elaborated a lot in the report, the understanding of the autonomy by the Gunas goes beyond what is in the law. And they even has, I found this very unique, they have, the Gunas have their own constitution, and that is the constitution that they follow, and they quote in many, when they interact with the government, and the government has accepted that kind of that situation. So you will find, like, for instance, in the exploration of natural resources in the area, there is not a single company or state-owned company exploring any part of Gunayala. Why? Because the Gunas are not allowed that. There is, a few years ago, the Colombian government had the idea of selling power, electricity to Panama, and they designed that it will go through Gunayala. The Gunas opposed to that, and so they couldn't do it. The Colombian government was not used to that kind of reaction from indigenous people, so finally they ended going through the Emberá territory. So the role of Displacement Solution, the idea with the report was to call the attention on in Panama about the issue, and we make some specific recommendations in the report, and our role really is trying to empower the community, not really to empower the community is very empowered, but to provide tools to the community in their fight in the process of relocation. So since our visit, the community of Gardisubdub has been very active. They were very happy because they were able to talk to national media about the case, and so they got a lot of publicity. So there are a lot of things going on. The government expressed interest. Also, that the release of the report coincides with the UN Conference on Indigenous People in New York, and the Climate Change Conference also in New York. And the Panamanian president was, the new Panamanian president, Varela, was there, and he expressed a lot of support for indigenous people and a lot of support for actions on climate change. So his government has been very receptive to this. Panama is one of the few countries in Latin America that has not approved yet the International Labour Organization Convention 169 on indigenous people's rights. They already expressed that they want to ratify the convention. So it seems that the government seems very receptive. The Ministry of Housing, the new government, they say that they want to look at the housing project, and so the community of Gardisubdub has started to setting meetings with the ministry. The Deputy Minister of Indigenous Affairs also mentioned that they want to call a meeting with different actors in this process, different ministries and the Guna community. But we are clear that this is a process that has been and it should be led by the community. The Gunas are very autonomous, very independent, very proud, very resourceful, very smart. They have a lot of very qualified people. So our role really has been supporting them in this process, and we are happy to help if there is room for us to help. But if there is no need, we'll be happy to end it there. But we hope that things will start to move on. The last question.
How do you explain their ability to protect this area from, or companies that want to, let's say, mine, or Colombia wants to run power lines? I mean, it just seems, compared to what you hear about in other countries, these indigenous communities, it just seems like these companies, they say, well, no, we don't want you, and they just go right through and do it anyway. So I'm just curious how they've been able to. I mean, I understand they have a constitution, and it sounds like the government supports that, but I'm wondering how that even continues, or why that's that way.
Yeah, there is an anthropologist at MIT, James Howie, who is the main expert, academic expert on the Gunas. Has been working with them for over 40 years. he always said, I cannot, and he was there actually by the day we released the report. He always said in his books, I cannot believe that this autonomy process has gone so far. So I think that to understand it, you need to look at history. They resisted all type of colonization. They expelled the French, they expelled the Scottish. Actually, it was interesting because it was in the news recently with this plebiscite in Scotland, around 300 years ago or so, when Scotland, the Scottish, before they joined the UK, the last attempt, they tried to create a new settlement here, and they have it. So it's still a town called Nueva Scotia, New Scotland, but they were expelled by the Gunas. And after that defeat, that was reported in the newspapers, the Scottish finally agree on joining the UK. So there is a I think that geography helped a lot. This is a very isolated area. Remember, and this is important to keep in mind. This is the Darien Gap. This is a very foresty area. There is no. You heard of the Pan American Highway, and there is no Pan American Highway that connects Central and South America. It's important to know because I have found a lot of people, Americans, that want to travel to the Pan American Highway and go there, and they get very surprised that the Pan American Highway ended somewhere over here. Again, one issue is location. The fact of being located in the small islands, I think that also helped. I think that the subsystem of government also is, I would call it at least confusing. If you read the history books about that, something that is very common is that different people that tried to colonize over centuries to colonize the Kunas, they were able to cooptate some leadership and war in some areas, but then they were trying to move to another areas and it didn't work. The people didn't follow the leader. So it could be, the leadership structure could be a little bit messy. Actually, I think that in a smaller scale, we saw a little bit of that. Like to go to Gunayala and do this kind of research, you need a formal letter from the Guna General Congress. So we have the letter and we went to the islands, and the first thing we went to the authorities, the local silos. This is the letter, and the General Congress say that we can do this, and these meetings and these interviews, and we're taking pictures around. And in one of the islands, this one that decided not to relocate, the elder person there say, this letter doesn't work here. This is you need to go. The General Congress meet twice every year, every 6 months, and so major decisions regarding Gunayala happen there. So his argument was this kind of decision needs to go to one General Congress. That was March. The next one was scheduled, I think, for this month, for October. So I remember that our photographer was furious that was happening, but my reaction was actually sure. If you think that is not okay, it's fine with us. We still love to be here, and we'll enjoy the night and the island, and we'll go back to Valenzuela the next day. So I didn't push at all. And the guy 5 minutes later changed his mind, and actually he allowed us to take pictures of the meeting, something that in Cabrisuduk, that people were very supportive, very nice with us. The only thing that they didn't allow us was to take pictures of the meeting. So I was thinking myself when that was happening, I was remembering, like reading those books and finding, you believe that you can have the backing of some authorities here, and then you move to another island, and the local chiefs there say, no, no way, this doesn't work in that way. So that probably that complex system of government might be another factor. A very strong culture, very proud culture, very strong language. The Gunas have also been able to take advantage of not only protected education, their own education system, education in their own language, but also they have taken good advantage of educational opportunities from Western style schools. And there is a good body of Guna intellectuals, biologists, lawyers, sociologists, that are very, actually very impressive. So you have, and the Guna Congress work with them. So the local, the caciques, they have several teams of advisors depending on the matter. Something that I didn't mention in my report is that something that we didn't mention in the report, but is also going on in Gunayala, has to do with RED Plus, this initiative about forest protection and the use of forests for carbon sinking. A year ago, a company in partnership with an NGO here from the US that has some offices in Panama, they have a proposal for start implementing a RED project there. The Gunas, they did a process of consultation through all the communities, and the decision of the whole communities was to reject the project. But as a way, but once the decision was reached, and to avoid kind of external pressure on that, they prohibited any further discussion, especially from people from outside Gunayala, about the topic. So when we visited Gunayala, that was a topic that we should not be talking about, so that wasn't the main focus. There is a connection there, I would say, for further research. Will be interesting, and some Guna friends say perhaps in 4 or 5 years they even could disclose all the files of that project, but they decided to reject a specific project. And one of the reasons that I heard of was that in some communities people freaked out with the idea of that this company will use drones to monitor the area, and there were also concerns about hunting rights and hunting, the ability to hunt in the area.
That's very interesting. I always thought Gunayala territory was just some Las Islands. But you've got that whole Caribbean coast is so, and they're autonomous. So that means they can engage in foreign trade with other countries. And I'm just wondering, like narcotraficantes.
Yeah.
That whole coast is theirs. So is it theirs, or is it belong to Panama? Does the Panama government have bases along there to check?
This is an autonomous. This is an autonomous region as part of Panama. It's not an independent state. So they say it in this way. They have very advanced autonomous rights, but as part of the Panamanian state. Yeah, the drug trafficking is a big issue in Gunayala. This is on the border with Colombia. In Colombia, this area also is very isolated. It's a foresty area, so there is a lot of drug trafficking going on here, and some communities are also affected. It's a major issue, and you can perhaps some as in any other place, some Gunas might be involved in the business. Not uncommon in any place, but it's a big issue. So the Guna Congress, this is one of the main concerns and main issues. But it's mostly in this area. The Sunduk Island actually is about here. So this area is less prominent. The problem is that.
Well, just on behalf of classes and the Human Rights Program, we want to thank you, Carlos, for this.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I can share the pictures. That is, I can share the text.
Just quickly,
Alberto?
I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'm just curious about the agreement between the government of Panama and the UNA. Were you able to see, like, is there like a contract, like a legal agreement on this kind of relationship that they have is more autonomous, but now Displacement Solutions is calling for the Panamanian government to get on board, and also about the role of Displacement Solutions. Is your goal to foster some kind of a forum so the parties will come and agree on what to do, or like, for example, in their funds, if they're international funds, who would receive the funds? The Panamanian government or the UNA? Or third party, all those kind of things.
Yeah. Thank you, Alberto, for that very important question. So the first, the autonomous status of, so again, the Gunas have this revolution in 1925, and they it was an armed revolution. They, after abuses by the government. By the new government of Panama. Remember, Panama separated from Colombia in 1903. The Gunas expelled, they killed the police officers that the central government had in the region, and they expelled all the other state functionaries. Actually, the story behind that, we were obviously promoting the principles. I think that, unfortunately, we don't have time today, but we could, there could be a topic for another future talk about the Peninsula Principles, or in general other instruments regarding what to do with climate displaced population. I think that we might have time only for one or two more questions.
Will you be giving your PowerPoint presentation to the center here, supposed to understand?
They tape it here, so the tape will be available.
You have the clarity of the maps and everything.
Sure. Yeah, I will say, typically I would not hesitate, but I was traveling with a professional photographer. He is so obsessed with his photos that I don't know. So is that the Gunas, as a way of protection against the Panamanian government, they asked the U.S. Military to intervene as a broker in the process. Remember, the Panama separated from Colombia in 1903 as a result of the actions or the intervention of the U.S. government, so with the idea of building the canal. So the U.S. government was very involved in Panama, was really the de facto government there, or the de facto power, the real power. So the military was able to kind of bring the two parts together so that the Panamanian government will not retaliate, because again, at least 10 police officers were killed by the Gunas in that process. So the Panamanian government didn't retaliate, and also the government agreed on created an autonomous region, and finally, since 1938, the Comarca of Gunayala was established. However, as I mentioned in the presentation, and we elaborate a lot in the report, the understanding of the autonomy by the Gunas goes beyond what is in the law. And they even has, I found this very unique, they have, the Gunas have their own constitution, and that is the constitution that they follow, and they quote in many, when they interact with the